Good afternoon.
Just trying to match Sasha's skirt here, but that's some energy. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see some friends. So I'm Lou, and this is Darren. So Mastercard is an incredible story of innovation, but also how it supports this industry. So we're going to explore a little bit of that. I've asked Darren to give his perspective on what works, what's difficult, how do you get through some of that. So hopefully we'll have a good conversation for about 15 minutes. All good? Did everybody get the hot lunch? Because every year this is a problem. And what I hadn't realized, some of you who've been before actually had a strategy for standing by the door to trip people up as they were coming out with the trays. So hopefully that worked. So Darren, one of the things that I'd love to get your perspective on is you've heard a lot today about the UK fintech ecosystem, these great people in front of us and who are here today. We have some incredible businesses and we have some incredible scale-ups. What is some of the challenges or some of the successes that you're seeing on how people scale in this industry?
Well, first of all, yeah, we'll start off with that. I'll try and remember all of that. So good afternoon, everybody. I think probably to learn about the future, we probably need to look back into the past. And I think if we go back 10 years or so, the neobanks came to fruition. And I guess we have to look at that and say, well, why were those neobanks, the Revoluts, Monzo, Starlings, why were they so successful? And I think as we look at that, you know, it's really clear that what they did was, out of the back of the financial crisis, I think the large incumbent banks were looking more from a compliance aspect, shall we say, rather than a customer experience. And I think those guys came in and noticed there was a gap there and decided that they would do three things. So they would bring a new customer experience to their customers. They would focus on their brand and make sure their brand became brand of choice. But everything they did would be customer-led. So, and I think in doing that, you know, focused on those three things, understanding how to bring that to market, was the Uber moment of payments. You know, we saw that in the taxi world, and this was the moment. And it wasn't just because they came up with a great idea. It was a set of circumstances that enabled that to happen. But what was important then and what is important now is understanding what they were looking to achieve and how they wanted to achieve it. And I think that today is exactly the same. It doesn't have to be complicated. Yeah, we all live in and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, but we all live in this technical bubble in payments where we all get very excited about the new technology and, you know, how can we use this new technology to do something? And I fear, you know, I've been around this industry for quite some time, and what I see quite often is fintechs lose sight of what it is they're trying to do because they get caught up in driving the technology rather than the customer experience. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, as I look back and I look forwards, that's kind of how I see that.
It's really interesting because whenever you meet people from Mastercard as well, one of the things that always strikes me is the passion you talk about the brand, which you hear that in fintech founders or founders more generally, is people talk about the brand really passionately in about 30 seconds. And I always feel when you talk to, like just standing here while we were chatting, like people who work in the organization, that passion for the brand. So just building on from how, you know, the challenges of scaling, which, you know, to your point is keeping that laser focus. I mean, Charles McManus about this time last year talked about how he kept ClearBank so simple. I totally agree with. But obviously as fintechs grow, or as any startup grows, the complexity of the business does increase, particularly when we look at today around fraud and customer protection and compliance and expectations of clients and customers. Do you have any, I mean, these are really big questions. Do you have any advice or anything that you've seen in the industry where managing that complexity has been successful, or where you've seen people do this really well? It's usually by learning that you didn't do it well in the first place.
Yeah, there's lots of learnings.
Yeah, exactly.
What didn't work too well. Again, and simplicity is maybe the word of the day here at the moment. But you don't have to do it on your own. And I think that's the key lesson here, right? Yeah. We have a very advanced ecosystem. Yeah. We have players in that ecosystem who can help you scale your business. So I would say, and it depends what you're in business for as a fintech, right? I've worked with fintech since 2010 at Mastercard. I've seen very different types of fintech. So we have those that have a great idea, they want to get it to scale so they can sell it. And you have those who are in it for the long term, who want to build out a long-term payments business. The problem with the second one is there's two types of people who want to do that. Those who want to do it on their own and believe they can, and those who want to lean in on the partnerships of others in the first stage of that growth. And I'll give an example, bin sponsorship. I'm sure you're very familiar with what bin sponsors are, but issuers of Mastercard who don't issue their own cards and programs, but they license they loan their license to those who don't have a Mastercard license so they can issue payment cards out to the industry. The reason why you'd want to use a bin sponsor is because a bin sponsor takes all of that need for you to have payments expertise in your own business, enables you to avoid compliance, regulations from Mastercard, etc. And it enables you as a fintech leader to focus on three things again. So your investment, which is key, your customers, and developing your idea. And once you have those three things nailed down to the floor, your business will have grown, and as your business grows, you're probably of a size where you're starting to scale. You can bring in that payments expertise. You can choose, if you wish, to go on your own way and build that expertise within your own business. And just to give an example, every one of those three neobanks I mentioned earlier, every single one of them started through the bin sponsorship path. There is no coincidence that they have been scaled to be the largest of their type in the industry. So it doesn't always work, but there is nothing sadder than seeing fantastic innovative ideas that fail because somebody gets sucked in to needing to be a payments expert to run a payments company when they have no expertise to do that. And there honestly is absolutely no need for anybody to be in that position. Lean in, use the other partners, have a plan of stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Stage 1 is survival, getting your investment, get yourself up and running. Second is scale, and then the third is just make lots of money for your shareholders.
It's interesting because we are building as a industry and as this part of the sector, decades legacy businesses, which is super exciting to see how people are I work with one of them. I won't talk about that here. But and then you think about, actually, you've got a fast turn then of some founders, which all of those things are good. I love your point around lean in. It's really funny because every year we do this, but yet it feels like you're meeting friends every single year. And there's nowhere else that you can actually do that. And it is a sector that will support you. And I think that point, and you guys have been massive supporters of this part of the sector for years around supporting businesses grow, and part of that story, not just for Mastercard, but how businesses have scaled through. One of the areas that I'm super passionate about at the moment, we heard Lucy Rigby talk about some of this today around agentic commerce. And actually, as we start to see more automation in payments, what's your views on how the role of payments will change as we start to see more and more people shift to this, but also what are some of the challenges that we're going to have to think about?
I think as a consumer, I'm filled with dread of what it may bring. And I'll explain why I say that in a moment. But I think there is no doubt we're now moving into, a while ago, about 5 years ago, people were saying to me, look, we've been through the neobank stage, been through the fintech stage, what's coming next? Here it is, right? So agentic AI, the technology that is not only processing the payments, but also making the decision on behalf of you, me, our companies, is what's coming next. And I think that those that do that in a way that ensures that trust is at the center of what's being done are going to be those that succeed. So, I see, a time where, and the reason, by the way, going back to why I said I'm filled with dread is because I always have a gauge, and it's a very simple gauge, I'm sure many of you use it. You know, if I put something in front of my mum and dad, what would they say? Well, I tell you now, if I told them they could go on to a website, book a flight to Australia, which they love to fly to, they can put in their price and the dates and the times that they might want to fly. And 4 months later, they may get an email that tells them that something has booked them on a flight and taken the money out of their bank account. I can assure you that they wouldn't say, I can't wait for that day, right? They would say, over my dead body. And I think that's why I come back to trust, because I think those that will succeed in this is not how they go from 0 to 100 miles an hour instantly. It's how do you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in a managed, sustainable way where you bring, and it goes back to this technology bubble that I was talking about earlier. We get caught up in it's possible, we should do it. We need to always keep in mind that we're serving consumers, we're giving consumers choice. We should make those choices available to them, but they will all be based in trust and convenience. And that's how I see that unfolding.
And I mean, it's great to have a coughing fit when you're in the middle of a fireside chat, so really enjoying that at the moment.
Was trying to cover you while you were having it.
Brilliantly.
Can't do it again. I can tell a joke if you need me to tell a joke. I mean,
he did say this before we come up. He said, let's get some water so that we don't have a coughing fit. I knew as soon as he said that I was in trouble. What I love about what you've said is, and I feel this whenever I walk into the businesses that are represented here, you don't have customer experience champions because everybody feels that client-led. And I think for me, that's one of the things that we could all learn is how do you feel that through the organisation? Those are the ones that are going to win in this space. But one of the challenges around, I mean, you've talked about agentic AI, and I think we're all grappling, what does that really mean? I mean, everybody's Claude co-work these days, was OpenAI before, and it will keep changing undoubtedly. And it's super exciting, the opportunity that it presents. Here's another question, Darren, this one's a cracker. So the national payments vision points to significant change ahead. What do you think that means in practice for fintech businesses in the UK?
this wasn't the one I said don't ask, was it?
Yeah, this is the one you said.
Yeah,
He fell for that. Do you know when you speak to somebody before and you go, what is it you want me to avoid? And I always ask those questions. So this is one of them.
Yeah. NPV, don't mention it. And here we are. So you carry on coughing. I'll answer the question. So look, I think, in all seriousness, I think NPV provides a fantastic opportunity for fintech specifically. It will bring down the barriers to the next-gen infrastructure that I believe that fintechs will be able to engage with in a much more open manner. They'll be able to layer products and services over that infrastructure, and they'll be able to bring multi-channel, multi-rail, multi-payment solutions right across all consumer groups. So I think that the NPV brings a massive opportunity. I think what we need to keep in mind is the key principles of trust. I've said it before, trust, convenience, all these things, but that's what has to be at the center of what comes next. So, and also, we've probably, you may well have heard this already, and you probably expect me to say this, but whatever comes next needs to be better than what's already here. So if you want to bring consumers on that journey, they need to think that there's a reason for them to engage in something different. I can assure you, consumers very, very rarely wake up in the morning and think, crikey, I can't wait to get out there and find that next innovation in payments so I can use it. What they do is wake up and say...
I don't know, I do.
I was talking about normal people.
Okay, sorry.
But I think, but what they do is say, this is what I want to purchase, this is who I want to pay, and I want that to be as seamless as possible. And I think that's where NPV will open up the opportunity for everybody in this room to really think through what customers need. It goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning with the neobanks 10 years ago. What is it the customer needs? What is it the consumer wants to do? And how do you make that as seamless as possible? Now, the problem is, by the way, is until you've got the trust, the friction needs to be there. But the moment, and I was talking to a colleague earlier who said, well, you look at Amazon, I don't want there to be any friction. Well, that's because you completely trust Amazon, all right? So when we get to that point across the industry, then the world is our oyster and the opportunities are abundant.
And just to close up, and I'm just slightly changing this last question. Sasha, Darren and I were talking about, we love this event, and Darren and I hadn't met before. Like, we've both given most of our careers to this industry, 25, 30 years. And so many of you have, because we just deeply care about doing better for customers, supporting growing business, drives the economy, creates jobs. Everybody wins, and I'm so passionate, and I know Darren is. What are you excited about?
Oh, well, that is the question. I mean, the problem is, the thing I'm most excited about is the unknown. Yeah. Right? And I think that's what gets us all out of bed every single morning. It's why, you know, I've been at Mastercard for 26 years, and, you know, reason I stayed with Mastercard for that amount of time is, one, they paid me reasonably well, so I thought it was a good place to stay. But what really kept me there was the innovation agenda within Mastercard, the fact that we're always looking to drive to what comes next, whether that be stablecoin, whether that be account to account, whether that be cards, whether that will be, you know, hoverboards in the future. I don't know, right? But Mastercard's always, I feel like, always been at the forefront of it. We're always willing to do it. And it's that unknown. The unknown is what excites me. It's what hopefully excites my team. And every day brings a fresh challenge. What is there not to love about that?
Can I just say a massive thank you to Darren, and please, these guys are brilliant. There's a Mastercard team here. Please grab them, because they do so much for this part of the sector. And what I love about it, you actually do it very quietly as well, in terms of how you
Never been said about me before.
how you support businesses, how you support individuals. They're always willing to collaborate, to talk, to discuss. So please grab them, a number of them at the front. But a huge thank you to Darren and the team.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.